and welcome to this Astranti video for the strategic case study. Today we're going to be looking at an industry analysis of the video game industry for the pre-scene company Pixlwizz. Before we even get into the analysis itself, we're going to need to set out why we're even doing it. Well, this is because the examiners say we should. In the examiner's report, they say you need an awareness of the industry that the business operates in. They also expect you to have excellent knowledge of the pre-scene industry, and you should take time to understand this industry because it will help to maximise your marks. This requirement links directly into your role. In the pre-scene, you are told you are a senior manager in Pixlwizz's finance function. You report directly to the board and advise on special projects and strategic matters. We bring this up because you're expected to answer these questions as if you were really the senior manager at Pixlwizz. The industry analysis will help give you logical business advice and give you some examples that you can use to ground your answer in the real world. There is a caveat, however. Any industry is way too large to be able to encompass in a short video. There's simply too much information to fit in. So the point is that you need the right information, and that's exactly what we've done for you. We've scoured the web so that you can have all of the information put together, and it's what we think will be most relevant to you in the exam. Okay, let's kick things off then with an introduction to the video game industry, and we'll start with its history because it's important to know where the industry started and where it's at now. So, we know that the video game industry is actually a relatively new field of business, and it's only really become popular within the last 40 years or so. And when it first started in the mid-1950s, before the likes of Super Mario and Lara Croft became household names across the globe, video games were actually used just to test the limits of programming. They were just used to make simple games like blackjack or chess. And this continued throughout the 60s until video games became commercialized in the 70s, with Atari's Pong becoming the first commercialized game. And the success of Pong led to companies like Namco, Williams Electronics, Stern Electronics, and Nintendo copying the format and also taking their place in the industry. So, it sounds like it's all going well, but the industry actually faced its first hurdle in the 1980s with a video game crash. The market was just oversaturated with low quality games, meaning the industry just plummeted, until Nintendo introduced the Nintendo Entertainment System, which revitalized the industry. So then, by the 90s, the gaming industry had recovered. It was back on the rise, and the age of maturity arrived as Sony started releasing the PlayStation and Nintendo released the N64. The late 1990s also saw the widespread growth of internet usage, which meant video games could begin to incorporate online elements. And then this trend of the 90s continued into the 21st century, where Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo continued to release successful consoles. These consoles supported increasingly complex and mature games that became sort of like blockbuster movies. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 received the first ever red carpet premiere for a video game at London's West End in 2009. This period also saw the massive popularisation of MMORPGs, which is massively multiplayer online role-playing games. Games like World of Warcraft or RuneScape are an example of these, with World of Warcraft having 10 million subscribers in 2014 and being responsible for generating over £1 billion of revenue in the same year. Video games also went under another evolution when smartphones and app stores entered the market in 2007, and the industry was able to enter mainstream culture in a way not seen previously. And now we're in 2021. The games industry is now worth approximately $155 billion, eclipsing every single entertainment industry in size. So, let's see how Pixlwizz fits into this industry then. The pre-scene states that Pixlwizz was founded in 1986. This would make it one of the original players in the market. But if you remember, the 80s was also the time of the crash. This could have meant it was a real challenge for Pixlwizz to enter the market. However, Pixlwizz appeared to focus on supplying the new market of home computers, which allowed the business to grow. And even then, it looks like Pixlwizz has actually been able to keep up with and even lead the industry by embracing technological developments. The birth of the internet meant that Pixlwizz expanded into massively multiplayer online games. They released Cratchy Swan, which now has more than 300 million registered players worldwide. And they've just released a new MMO called Keppel Quest. Crucially though, Pixlwizz have also found a way to continue the success of its most popular game, Jacob Plunge. They do this by embracing the franchise method, which means they just launch new versions of the same game every year. This is similar to what Activision Blizzard do with games like Call of Duty. Franchising a popular game is a highly effective way of generating consistent revenue. However, it does mean they have to constantly fight franchise fatigue that can occur from yearly releases so that players don't get tired of just seeing the same games over and over. Right, well, that brings us to the end of the application. So now we're going to move on to the next part of this chapter, which is the products that are sold and are on the market in the industry. We're going to look at this in two forms. Firstly, we've got physical media. So this are things like discs and cartridges. They're generally more expensive than digital media gaming products. They can also become collector's items, and they don't rely on a strong and stable internet connection. You also then have digital media. So this is like the non-physical version of games. So you're thinking of apps, PC programs, and cloud games. The physical copies then aren't actually needed. The user can just purchase a license for the game and download it. But these products tend to need a strong internet connection to download and run efficiently. We also need to know what kind of platforms these products are sold on. Obviously, you have your consoles, and that's things like your PlayStation 5, your Xbox, your Nintendo Wii. You can use multiplayer functions on these consoles, and unlike PCs, they don't require hardware upgrades. Console exclusive game releases also mean that some of the biggest games are only played on console. PC gaming is another huge platform though, and it's not to be overlooked. So PCs like the MacBook, the Corsair One, the Lenovo's, they're all renowned for the highest quality of gameplay. And moving on then, we also have another product relatively new to the industry, which is the mobile phone. So your iPhones, your Google phones, Samsungs, any of these. And these products actually tend to be aimed at people who don't consider themselves gamers. Mobiles often provide affordable access as well, although they tend not to have the full features of games unless the user pays for them. And then finally, we have handheld consoles like your Game Boy or your Nintendo Switch, and these are compact and transportable, and some games are also released exclusively for handheld. Let's also take a look at the genres then. Let's start with virtual reality, or VR as we'll probably refer to it as going forward. These are items like Microsoft Flight Simulator or Star Wars Squadrons. And these products provide a space which exists entirely separately from the real world. They also offer new gameplay possibilities because of their immersive nature. And as we mentioned previously, we also have MMOs. So this is like Club Penguin, an absolute childhood favourite of many. And a key feature of MMO products is that the game actually continues whether the player is there or not. And social interaction is absolutely key, as many MMO games also require some degree of teamwork. Another major genre in the video game industry is also roleplay. Dungeons and Dragons is probably the most famous example of this. And these games tend to be set in elaborate settings for quests and explorations to take place in. There's also puzzle games, things like Big Brain Academy, Tetris, Word Connection. The levels then also get increasingly difficult as players move through them. And finally then, let's take a look at first-person shooter games. So that's things like Call of Duty or COD and Halo. And these are often fast-paced combat and they generally focus on guns as weapons. That's a general overview of the products that are on the market within the industry. What we also need to do is know their direct competitors. So to contextualise this, there are broadly two sides to game development. Firstly, you've got development studios. These are the people that are responsible for creating, designing and engineering games. But then you also have the publishers. Publishers are responsible for promoting things like marketing and finance, and they also handle the business side of the video games. But you must know the two aren't mutually exclusive. A developer can be a publisher or they can be separate entities. So let's look at some major companies that might be a direct competitor of Pixlwizz. Firstly, you've got Activision Blizzard based in America, who provide both game development and game publishing services. You also have Sony based in Japan, who also have branched out into console manufacturing and electronics supplying. We also then have the American company Microsoft, involved with console manufacturing, game development, game publishing and electronics supplying. And we have Nintendo, again Japanese just like Sony. Another American company is EA. And then if we look on just to some more companies, we've got Valve Corporation, again American, but also one we haven't seen before, which is a storefront owner. They own Steam. And then we've got Ubisoft, our first non-American and non-Japanese company. Ubisoft are French. And finally then we've got American Naughty Dog. Game development is their main focus and Sony is its game publisher and owner. Now we've understood the competitors, let's also have a look at some trends in the video game industry. Firstly, let's have a look at cloud gaming. Now, cloud gaming has grown significantly over the last couple of years, namely because it bypasses all of the issues associated with physical and digital gaming, like long download times, because players can just stream it directly in real time, meaning they have the latest hardware without even investing in it. It also gives publishers a way to monetize old games. Now, hand in hand with the rise of cloud gaming is gaming subscription services. Now, a gaming subscription gives players unlimited access to hundreds of games for a monthly or annual fee. Things like Xbox Game Pass are one of the most popular of these products. Now, remakes and reboots as the industry becomes more established have become more and more popular as gamers yearn for their younger days of playing good nostalgic games. Reboots also have less risk associated with them than a completely new franchise, which isn't always guaranteed to sell well. And now market size. We've already talked about how the video game industry just seems to be growing and growing, and it's actually forecast to continue rising. The industry is now estimated to be worth $159.3 billion, which is an increase of 9.3% from 2019. And as methods of gameplay continue to diversify, they're just going to become more and more popular. Inclusion in gaming is becoming more and more of a focus point within the industry, as the industry has often come under fire for marginalisation and ostracising of certain groups, namely women and minorities. And this isn't just taking place in the industry's workplaces, it's actually taking place, unfortunately, in the games themselves. However, as video games are becoming more and more popular, developers are beginning to design games to be more inclusive and representative of the newer, wider range of people playing. Now that we've understood what the trends of the industry are, we need to see how this applies to Pixlwizz. So let's have a start by looking at cloud gaming. The pre-scene tells us that many of Pixlwizz's games are accessed through cloud-based facilities, which are provided by third parties. The threat associated with this is that cloud software actually increases the vulnerability of a company's network to malware or other forms of attack. Most of Pixlwizz's revenue is actually from games that are downloaded or accessed through the internet on a pay-to-play basis. And games for consoles and handheld consoles are generally downloaded from console manufacturers which are hosted on this cloud. An over-reliance on this technology could lead to issues in play as well as this malware threat. This has also been noticed in the Westland Daily News article, so have a flick through and make sure you read through that article. Though, Pixlwizz does actually mitigate this by still selling their games in physical media. The physical media demand is actually generally quite weak, but in countries where the internet access is slow or unreliable, this demand grows. Gaming subscriptions, although a popular product, there's no mention of them in the pre-scene document. Other competitors have already achieved success. You've got Microsoft's Game Pass with 15 million subscribers, and also Xbox Game Pass, which we mentioned earlier. If Pixlwizz isn't turning their attention to this soon, it might be harder for them to break into the market. But whilst they've missed out on gaming subscriptions so far, from what we can tell, they've definitely caught on to the remake and reboot trend. Jacob Plunge rapidly became their best-selling game, so they just continue to release new versions of the game every year since 2018. This means that they can reduce their risk of loss, which is associated with new games. And also, Pixlwizz was established in the same area of many of its main competitors like Activision Blizzard. Many of Activision's remakes like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro means that Pixlwizz could actually try to use its back catalogue of games to appeal to this nostalgia in the same way that Activision have. It also means that younger audiences will have new content to play with that they've actually never experienced before. Let's take a look at the market size now then. So the market size of video games is growing at an excellent rate and is continuing to do so. This is good news for Pixlwizz. They'll be able to continue to sell, and the growth of market is actually already reflected in Pixlwizz's bottom line as their revenue increased by 6% between 2019 and 2020. Now we've had a look at inclusion as a trend within the industry, so let's see how this applies to Pixlwizz. So Pixlwizz's board of directors actually sets them apart from the rest of the industry, as 4 out of 8, or 50%, of board positions are held by women. If I put this into context for you, Activision Blizzard only has 10% board positions held by women, and as low as 10% is Nintendo. Their diverse board means that they can avoid negative press and also gain positive PR.
So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it, and more importantly, you have found it useful. Just going to take a moment to tell you about the courses that we produce here at Astranti for our case studies. And all of the products that you see here are available as standard as part of the course, but they are also available for purchase individually. We have the Exam Technique series, which is a study text and a video series, which looks at how to plan your answers, how to read the material and analyze the material effectively, and to manage your time effectively in the exam, which is incredibly important. Most people who fail the case study exam fail it because of poor exam technique. So that's a really important video series for you to watch to ensure that you've got that technique. Because there is a specific technique to sitting the case study exam, and all will be revealed in that video series. And do head over to the website for more information about it. We then have our theory revision series, which again is a study text and a video series, and that looks at the specific theories that are relevant to the case study, because a lot of the material from the E's, the P's, the F's won't appear in the case study. It's only specific topics that are frequently tested in the case study. So to save you from revising all the E's and all the F's and all the P's, we've created a more condensed revision series to refresh yourself of the knowledge that you'll need for the exam. We then have our pre-scene analysis series, which looks through the pre-scene page by page, bringing out the important points. In addition to that video series, there is also a video that looks at the top 10 most likely unseen issues, and also the strategic analysis video, which takes all the key models from the CIMA syllabus and applies them to the case. We then have our industry analysis pack, which is a large document that looks at the industry that the pre-scene is based on, looks at all the real companies that are actually operating in that actual industry in the real world, looks at how they market, what the suppliers are, what the key stakeholders are, how they operate, industry trends, and also a series of industry examples that you can use and reference in your exam. And we've got sample paragraphs to show you how you would use it in the exam, and that's a document. There's also an accompanying video with it. We have our mock exams, which are based on actual exams, but they feature the reference to the actual case, so they're on the actual case that you will sit the exam on. We've done our best to make them as close to the actual exams as possible, and you can actually sit those online in an online system that replicates the one that you'll use on the exam day. So you can really test yourself under exam conditions, and we provide marking and feedback for those mocks as well, where you'll get a tutor that will analyze your script and will give you a comprehensive document providing you with information not only on your actual script, as in whether you passed and failed and what you should have brought up and what you shouldn't have brought up, etc. But we'll also give you an appraisal on your technique as well, how to improve your exam technique. We then have our question packs, which is a series of shorter mock style questions based around the core activities. So if you find that you really struggle with certain parts of the CIMA syllabus, that will be a really good way for helping you. For example, if it's the core activity A's that you're always struggling with, or the B's that you're struggling with, you can look at the specific core activity A pack, which will give you questions based on those subjects. And then we have our masterclasses. We have 2 live all-day masterclasses, one at the start of the course and one at the end of the course. The one at the start of the course will give you all sorts of hints and tips on how to plan, how to use your time effectively. We'll also go through the planning process live, which will be really helpful for you as you progress into your mock exams. And then we have the revision masterclass right at the end, which looks at everything you've covered, gives you a refresher on everything you've covered over the 6-week period. And that's going to be really useful for giving you those little extra hints and tips to get you the extra marks in the exam. So do head over to the website, www.astranti.com, for more information about those. And I hope to see you again for the next video.